This is your favorite apostle once again, Robert A. Enos of Greater Works Christian Church in Lancaster, California. However, I'm filming this in San Diego at a hotel overlooking the ocean, beautiful hotel looking over the ocean, because my lovely wife and I are at this pastor's training conference called, what's it called again?
Liberty Pastors Training Camp.
Liberty Pastors Training Camp. And pastors out there, I don't know how often they do this. This is the first time we're actually a part of this group, although we've been to other groups very similar. But the first time we've been with this group, and please look it up, Liberty Pastors Training Camp, and it'll probably tell you how often they do this and where they're going to do this. Today, let's see, today is Thursday, and so we've been here since Tuesday evening. It started Tuesday evening, went all day Wednesday, all day today, Thursday, and it'll go half day tomorrow, and then we'll go home. Today there was a gentleman, I'll show you this little pamphlet. I don't know if you can read that very well, but his name was, or is, I shouldn't say was, is K. Carl Smith. So K. Carl Smith. I'm sure the K stands for his first name, but he went by Carl Smith. And it says the Liberty Messenger. This gentleman brought about some powerful truths in this patriot training for us pastors. And he spoke a great deal about, well, not just a great deal, he spoke all about Frederick Douglass. Here's a picture of Frederick Douglass. He was a slave back in the early 1800s. And I'll tell you a little bit about him in just a moment. But it really, as he studied Frederick Douglass's life, it really changed his life. And as he is telling his story about Frederick Douglass and his story, it was helping to redefine my story, to be quite honestly, because just before I get into this, let me say something. I've always considered myself a proud conservative and did my best to build my life on biblical principles, number one, of course, which are conservative principles. So I was a proud conservative. And after listening to Carl, again, what's his name again? Carl Smith, about Frederick Douglass and his legacy, it made me not so proud to be a conservative. And I'll explain that in just a moment, and you'll see why. Not because I changed my mind about conservative values. I've just changed my mind a little bit about the title conservative. Let me just let the cat out of the bag before anybody turns me off thinking that I've turned to the other side, to the dark side of the force. I have not. The left, Democrats, the left, liberals, progressives, who are actually not progressing, they're going backward into wickedness, but that's another story, have done an excellent job, at least in this area, of demonizing the term or the idea or the concept of being a conservative. They've really made us, even though we stand on the Word of God, the Bible, they made us look like the bad guys in everything. So even going back to Rush Limbaugh days, where Rush Limbaugh even said, don't introduce yourself or talk, or say that you're a conservative, at least not up front, not real quick. Engage in conversation, talk about conservative values, show people how most human beings really have conservative values. They want the same things we want deep down inside of them. But once we start saying liberal, Democrat, then they go to their mindset, if they're a liberal, to liberalism, conservatives bad, conservative evil, conservatives wicked, when in their own lives, they still want the same things we do. Such as, I don't know about all of you, but we want freedom. We like freedom of speech, so we want to conserve that. We like freedom of religion, so we want to conserve that. We want our families healthy and whole so we can serve that. We want great education, not just education, we want great education for our children. So when we find great education or we establish great education, we want to conserve that. You see what I'm saying? But the very word conservative sometimes causes people to tune out and put this veil up or this lens that they start looking at us of wicked. You're bad. As Rush, I don't know why I can't speak again right now, but Rush Limbaugh used to say, making fun of it, oh, those wascally Republicans, trying to sound like Elmer Fudd, if you remember who Elmer Fudd was. So they put up this lens where all they could see is wascally Republicans on the other side of that lens, and the conversation gets shut down, if not completely shut off, because their minds disengage from healthy dialogue into, I've got to guard myself from the wascally Republicans, or I have to fight against wascally Republicans and this thing called conservatism. It's nonsense, we know, but that's why I say, maybe I'm not going to label myself as conservative, at least as much. I'm still a conservative, but I may not label myself like that because of the idea of what it conjures up in many people's minds, because we need to win them. So if using one word shuts them down, maybe we should change that one word or change the way we describe that one word so people will not shut us down, but it'll actually cause them to go, huh, you guys remember? Okay, maybe they'll go, huh, So anyways, I'm going to let Frederick Douglass and K. Carl Smith do the talking for me. Now, I'm not going to go through it. You can see this is not a very big pamphlet. I believe it's only 20, let's see, it's 20, total is 23 pages, 24 if you count the back, but 21 reading pages. I'm not going to go through all of it, even though we could do that in one podcast. I'm not going to go through all of that. Excuse me, let me get a drink of water, of my Fiji water. So I want to start with this. Again, this is called Frederick Douglass Republicans. Okay, that's very important. Frederick Douglass Republicans. Subtitle, it's not about color, it's about values. By K. Carl Smith. He writes in here, the linchpin. Now, again, you see I highlighted some things. I'm going to go over the highlighted sections, not everything. So if it seems like something was missed out, it was. Mainly just for time. But I want to get to some things that I feel is really the meat of this. So the linchpin, knowing the facts. He quotes a Bible verse, John 8:32 out of the NIV. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Ladies and gentlemen, that's so important. Whether you're a believer in Jesus Christ or not, this is a fact. This is not just a spiritual, religious idea. This is a fact. When you know the truth, that truth can make you free or set you free. So what it talks about is he had an experience. And I'm trying to turn, oh, there's the page. I couldn't find the page. Let me read this. Looking at the man in the mirror, he's speaking of himself, was not an easy thing to do. It was the most trying and difficult experience of my life, both mentally and spiritually challenging. This personal review process forced me to examine my personal relationship with Jesus Christ and question my political and historical beliefs that I thought were based on facts. So he's looking at himself. He's facing his belief system that he thought was based in facts. And, well, he started getting the truth. That's why he quoted that scripture. He tried to get the truth, and that truth ultimately set him free. But first, it caused a lot of pain and a lot of problems in his own heart as he processed these things. I had to decide if I was going to keep placing my allegiance for a political party ahead of my worship of Jehovah God. I had to decide if I was going to continue putting color before character and race before religion. As a result, I made up my mind to be a Christian champion and not a political chump. So he's making the decision. I decided I'm going to be a Christian champion instead of a political chump. Now you got to keep that in mind as this goes on, regardless of party affiliation. It was time for me to take an unwavering stand for Jesus Christ. Why was the process of reading my life backwards such a tough thing for me to do? I did not recognize I was spiritually and politically ill. He's starting to see this sickness that's in him because he held certain things to be fact that indeed were not fact. Why? Oh, I already read that. I did not I read that too. He was a politico schizophrenic. Politico schizophrenic. The manner in which I was voting did not match my Christian values. I was living one way and voting another. I was attending church on Sundays, raising holy hands, and with those same holy hands on election day, I would vote the complete opposite of the biblical teachings I received just days or weeks prior. So he's getting taught one thing in church and then voting the opposite of what the Bible was, or what he was learning from the Bible, what he was being taught out of the Word of God. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all too familiar with many, many, many among us. And I'm so glad that Carl Smith put together this little booklet so that we all, it's not about race, ladies and gentlemen. This is for white people, black people, brown people. This is for Asians. This is for everyone, especially if you're a Christian or you call yourself a Christian. We've got to get back to some biblical reality and truth, and let that biblical reality and truth guide our lives, not some political affiliation, okay? And let's see, where to go. Oh, here we are. If it was not brainwashing, what else explains why a Christian would vote the complete opposite of his or her belief, spitting in God's face? If it wasn't brainwashing, then what was it? Why else would I learn something from the Bible and vote completely opposite to it if I wasn't brainwashed? That's what he's asking that question. And he says, when you do that, or when he was doing that, it was spitting in God's face, because God was saying one thing, but he was voting completely opposite of God's will. Divine deliverance process. So he talks about his divine deliverance process. Now, I want you to pay attention to this. This is his words. This is his divine deliverance process. And I think many of you are going to be watching this video, need deliverance. It's not my words. Listen, and I want to say it like this, because I honestly hate bringing race into anything, because we shouldn't ever have to. We're all human beings. And as I heard even today, and I believe this, I've believed this for most all of my life, if not all of my life, there's one race. There's just one race. It's called the human race. We may have different colors of skin, but there's one race. So when I say I hate bringing race into it, what I mean by that is I hate that division, that divisiveness that we call race or racism or racial. Who cares what color of skin we have? We shouldn't care. So this is really for all of us. But here's the problem. There's certain things that I, as a white man, if I say, many people that are a little bit darker than me, which is most people on the planet, let's face it, just won't listen to, because a white man is saying that. That's why I so appreciate that he wrote this little book, had this experience, all around this gentleman. And before anybody else goes on, well, they say, well, that's a black man supporting a black man. I support this black man, not because he's black, but because he's brilliant and he's right on. I support this black man, not because he's black, but because he's brilliant and he's right on. So this is for everybody. It doesn't matter the skin tone. This is for all of us. So, anyways, this is his divine deliverance process. God delivered me from my self-oppressive, politico-schizophrenic mindset by taking me through the following process. And it is broken down into 2 graduated levels as shown below. Level 1, there's 2 levels of his process of deliverance. Level number 1, living by feelings. It reminds me of that song from a long time ago. Feelings. Anyways, feelings, living by feelings. And he quotes this from 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I talked as a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child. When I became a man, I stopped those childish ways. So living by your feelings is actually very childish. And if we're honest, we know that. We know that. You see little kids, and when their feelings get hurt, they cry or they lash out in anger. They have to be taught and trained by someone who's overcome that level 1 need for deliverance. This is the childish, immature, or faithless level. At this level, my reasoning and critical thinking skills were nowhere to be found. Intellect did not exist. So he says he was at this level of just feelings, living by feelings. He understood it. He came to that conclusion and that reality. It was childish. It was very immature, and it was without reason, meaning he didn't have his mental faculties involved in it, his ability to think critically and such. It was all emotion-based. Can you imagine going to the voting box? Think about this just for a minute. Going to the voting box and voting for somebody because of anger in you. And that's what a lot of people do. Or sadness in you. And that's what a lot of people do. Or some type of hurt, or even happiness. I'm happy, and looking at this one person or listening to the sound of their voice makes me happy. They don't know the policies. They don't understand the policies. They may not even agree with the policies, but they don't know them because they didn't engage their mind. It's just how that person makes them feel, or even worse, how the other person makes them feel. And so they dimple that Chad, they mark the little button, all based in feelings. And if somebody actually asked, what does this person stand for? What are their policies? You've seen some of these little video clips of the man on the street where they go and ask these people things. So who did you vote for? Oh, I voted for, it could be anybody. I voted for Biden. Why? And usually it comes down to this nowadays. I hate Trump. So you didn't vote for Biden because of his great policies. You were emotional. So you voted against Trump because of anger or hatred in your own heart, instead of based upon truth through their policies. And most of these people can't tell you honestly what the policies are of either party or either candidate. They just know they hate one. And look at the mess that we create for ourselves when we live based upon our emotions, or we vote based upon our emotions. So anyways, he goes on. It says the linchpin, knowing the facts. And he quotes, that's where he quoted John 8:32. You should know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So level number 2 is, remember, level number 1 was all living or voting in that sense, because that's what we're talking about mostly. Living by or voting by feelings. So level number 2 is living by faith. And he quotes Hebrews 10:38. And he quotes it out of, I believe this is the New Century Version, the NCV, and it says it like this: those who are right with me, talking about being right with God, those who are right with me will live by faith. But if they turn back with fear, I will not be pleased with them. In other words, just to make it kind of simple and to break down, if you're right with me, you live by faith. But if you turn back to living by your emotions or feelings, especially fear, God's not in that. God does not like it. God is not pleased with that. Isn't that interesting? And we can say that because fear is an emotion. And God said, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of peace, love, and a sound mind. So if you don't have a sound mind and you can't go into it with a sound mind, straight thinking, but only some kind of emotion such as fear, God's not in it and God's not pleased with it. But if you're right with God, if you're right with him, the Bible in other translations said the just, that means if you're right with God, shall live by what? Faith, not by their emotions. It doesn't mean we're not going to have emotions, but we have to learn how to grow up, have the emotions, feel the emotions without being ruled by those emotions, including the voting booth. So the level number 2, living by faith, he writes this: facts produce faith. Facts. After developing my political view structure, I had to decide if I would earnestly serve Jehovah God or if my ultimate allegiance would be to a political party. Was I going to, I'm getting the facts, I'm getting this education, I'm getting this understanding. So am I going to, based upon these facts, worship God or basically stay stuck adhering to, almost worshiping a political party? He had to make that choice, and he had to come to that place honestly within himself and make those decisions based upon now facts, not feelings. Facts over feeling, truth over emotions. Ugh, dirty word. So he writes this, and I hope that you can read this. I don't know if that's backwards to you or not, because you know how the films are, but why I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. Now remember, this is the writer. And he says this: why I am, he's not asking the question, why am I? Why I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. And he quotes Frederick Douglass here where he says, I am a Republican. This is Frederick Douglass saying this or writing this. I am a Republican, a black dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and I never intend to belong to any other party than the party of freedom and progress. Frederick Douglass, and he was born in 1817 and he passed in 1895. Truly a great man in American history. And isn't it interesting that he calls the Republican Party the party of freedom and progress? Who has tried to steal that? Well, the Democrats. They call themselves now progressives. They're not progressing anybody forward. Okay, they're not. But Frederick Douglass understood all the way back that the Republican Party was the party of freedom and progress. And you'll see why. The phrase Frederick Douglass Republicans is an all-inclusive political platform based on the 4 life-empowering values of Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass held on to these values. This is what made him the man that he really was. Respect for the Constitution, number 1. Respect for the Constitution. Number 2, respect for life. Democrats have no respect for life, to the point that they would just as much see a baby murdered while still in the womb than give that baby true life. Frederick Douglass understood respect for the Constitution and respect for life. Number 3, a belief in limited government, small government. Small government means small control. Big government means big control. And when a government or any person or institution has big control, a lot of control over people's lives, what is that called? Slavery. Democrat Party wants a big, overreaching, overpowering government, which means what? Slavery. It's no wonder that the Republican Party was started as an anti-slavery party, small government, very little control, and the Democrat Party is known as the party of slavery. And even in the modern time, big government, lots of control, if not all control. That's what they want. And number 4, his fourth value is belief in personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. Who right now is taking away personal responsibility? The Democrat Party. Liberalism. Progressive, so-called progressivism, which is a lie, but nonetheless, that's what they call themselves. They don't want to make anybody really responsible for their actions, even to the point that nowadays they are making the victims the criminals and criminals the victims, to the point that somebody can walk into a store, steal $900 and some odd dollars worth of stuff, and nobody's allowed to do anything or stop them. A criminal can go commit a horrible crime, and they have cashless, what do they call it? Bond or bail. So anyways, they don't have to put anything up, sign a few papers, go out the door to do it again, making the criminals the victims and the victims the criminals. The Republicans don't want that. We want everybody held responsible for their own actions, their lifestyle, what they do, and that's the way it's supposed to be. That was what Frederick Douglass did, and that's what it means, at least in part, to be a Frederick Douglass Republican. The Party of Freedom and Progress. Remember, that's the words of Frederick Douglass towards the Republican Party, the Party of Freedom and Progress. The Republican Party in Douglass's day was one of freedom and progress. Let's see. It was Douglass who declared political war on slavery. Remember, he was born a slave, and he came out of slavery at a very young age. And from that moment on, he declared himself a warrior against slavery. And he started speaking on it, writing on it, or against it, I should say. So he declared political war on slavery. Thus, Charles Sumner established the Republican Party, primarily because of what Douglass was saying. Frederick Douglass was saying, what Frederick Douglass was writing. He was very educated. He educated himself, by the way, even while in slavery, but nonetheless educated himself. He was a brilliant man all the way around. And his writings, once he was able to declare war on slavery, which he did in his writings and his articles and his speeches, Charles Sumner picked up that, picked it up from Douglass and formed the Republican Party. And the Republican Party was the anti-slavery party. It was the anti-slavery party. And it traces its roots back to Frederick Douglass and those 4 principles that I just read to you, those values that he lived on. The Republican Party was started. Now I'm going to read you some things. This is a little bit of reading, as you can see. But I want you to listen to this because this is all very powerful stuff about the founding of the Republican Party and the failures of the Democrat Party. The Republican Party was started in 1854. In fact, the Republican Party began as a merger of anti-slavery members from 4 political parties. Prior to the founding of the Republican Party, the Democrat Party gained control of Congress in 1820. So from 1820 to 1854, the Democrats controlled Congress, passed pro-slavery laws, and blocked the civil rights of Black Americans. The Democrat-led Congress passed 3 specific laws. So from 1820 to 1854, the Democrats were in power. And in 1854, that's when the Republican Party was founded as an anti-slavery party. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise was passed. The law permitted slavery in the federal territories, and it reversed the Northwest Ordinance of 1789. The Northwest Ordinance forbade slavery in the federal territories. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Law was passed. This law required Northerners to return escaped slaves back into slavery or pay a huge fine. Because of this law, approximately 20,000 blacks in the North fled to Canada. 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed. This law extended slavery into parts of Kansas-Nebraska territory, which included Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So now slavery was legal in those territories as well, all because of the Democrats. You see, when people like us, back to that word, conservatives, we're really adamant against the Democrat Party and its policies. It's not just the policies of today, it's their roots, it's who they are. Now, a lot of people can say, now listen, I want to put an end to this because I hear this. Well, the party can change over time. Yes, it can. I agree with that. However, when somebody or something changes so dramatically from the party, let's say from the party of slavery to the party of, say, civil rights, if you want to call it that. Let's assume for just a moment the Democrats became, they shifted from the party of slavery, anti-black slavery, to civil rights, okay? The party of the little people, as I used to hear when I was growing up. Why haven't they come out and apologized for their past? Why haven't they made a declaration condemning their past, their wicked, evil, unrighteous, unholy, ungodly past, and then put in paper a document, an official document in paper, and declare their future or where they're going from there? They've never done that, at least not on that level. Why didn't they change the name? From, say, Democrat Party to the new and approved anti-slavery party or anti-whatever party. They've never done that. All they've done is continue to go on and develop talking points to brainwash more and more and more people into believing that they're actually something that they are not. They haven't changed who they are, people. They just changed their tactics. Okay, let me read this. Where else did I leave off? The passing of these three laws created an intense political climate. To neutralize the pro-slavery agenda of the Democrat Party, the Republican Party was formed with two main purposes in mind: to end slavery and to secure equal rights for Black Americans. Why was the Republican Party created? To end slavery and to secure equal rights for Black Americans. So that if white Americans get it, Black Americans get it too. Equal. In 1860, Republican Party candidate Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States, for the first time, the Republican Party won the majority in the U.S. House and Senate, giving them control of lawmaking process. So you have Abraham Lincoln, a Republican Senate, and a Republican, House. Now, with these newfound political clout, the Republican-controlled Congress passed the following laws that ended slavery and secured civil rights for Black Americans. In 1862, slavery was abolished in Washington, D.C. 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, freeing all slaves in the southern states. In 1864, the Fugitive Slave Law was abolished. Remember, Congress just passed that a few years prior, but now the Republicans were in charge and they abolished it over the almost unanimous opposition of the Northern Democrats still in Congress. In 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau law was passed. This law formed a federal agency that set up schools and hospitals for Black Americans, and it distributed clothes, food, and fuel throughout the South. 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed. The amendment officially abolished slavery in the United States. So the 13th Amendment in 1865 officially abolished slavery in the United States. 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed. This amendment declared that former slaves were full citizens of the state in which they lived and were therefore entitled to all the rights and privileges of any other citizen in that state. On the negative, now here's a little bit of a negative, but follow along and you'll see it turned for a positive. On a negative note, in 1876, Republican President Rutherford B. Hayes negotiated with the Democrat-governed U.S. House and Senate. So jump forward just a little bit to 1876. Rutherford B. Hayes negotiated with the Democrats, U.S. House, and endorsed the Great Compromise. This law ordered federal troops to withdraw from Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, officially ending Reconstruction in the South. So that was a compromise, a bad one. And we recognize that. And he was a Republican. But let's go on. As the Republican Party exerted its influence to establish laws and policies that terminated slavery and supported the civil rights of Black Americans, the period of Reconstruction from 1865 to 1877 was a time of enormous political progress for Black Americans. The first elected Black legislators in the southern states. Now, this is the southern states, ladies and gentlemen. This was the southern states, okay? So all the first elected Black legislators in the southern states, to make it even more difficult, because it was in the South, they were all Republicans. For example, like I said, there would be a little bit of reading, but to me it's great reading, because what it is showing how in the United States of America, not only could we say at that point were the Black folks here in America freed, but now they are growing exponentially in power, if you will, recognition, and going beyond what most, especially the Democrats at the time, they didn't want that. They didn't want it at all. But in their face, we see the Republican Party making way and opening the door for these freed slaves, this new class of citizens, if you will. Because remember, they were slaves. They weren't citizens in that sense, or considered citizens. Now they come out of slavery, and boy, they're taking the world by storm. So in Texas, the first 42 Black elected to the state legislature were Republicans. 42 Blacks, the first 42 Blacks elected were all Republicans. In Louisiana, the first 95 Black state representatives and the first 32 Black state senators were Republicans. In Alabama, the first 103 Blacks elected to the state legislature were Republicans. In Mississippi, the first 112 Blacks elected to the state legislature were Republicans. In South Carolina, the first 190 Blacks elected to the state legislature were Republicans. In Virginia, the first 46 Black elected to state legislature were Republicans. In Georgia, the first 41 Blacks elected to the state legislature were Republicans. In Florida and North Carolina, the first 30 Blacks elected to the state legislature were Republicans. The first Black U.S. congressman, along with Black Republicans being elected to state offices, they also impacted the political arena on a national level. For instance, the first 7 Black Americans elected to the U.S. Congress were all, you guessed it, ladies and gentlemen, Republicans. They were as follows: Hiram Rhodes Revel from Mississippi, Benjamin Turner from Alabama. You notice that, again, southern states. Southern states where these newly freed Black men were hated by many of the white Southerners, and they were still able to get elected to not just state office level, but now federal office level. They overcome every obstacle. They fought through every roadblock put in front of them, and they still got elected to these high offices at the state level and the federal level in places that they were hated and reviled. Robert DeLarge of South Carolina, Josiah Walls from Florida, Jefferson Long from Georgia, Joseph Rainey from South Carolina, and Robert Brown Elliott from South Carolina. Isn't that powerful? Isn't that powerful? See, and that's what freedom does. And Republican Party is the party of freedom. And that's what freedom does. And it doesn't just do it for one select group. If it's true freedom, which the Republicans want to give all Americans, regardless of the skin color they have, if it's true freedom, it opens the door for people to overcome every obstacle, even if those obstacles are thrown in front of them by, in this case, former slave owners. They couldn't do anything to stop these newly freed, these new citizens, these newly freed slaves who are saying, now that I'm able to, I'm going to take the world by force. And they started getting elected to some of the highest office in the United States of America. Let me give you a few facts about the Democrat Party. Oh, Frederick Douglass again. I'm sorry. Let me read this quote. For the present, the best representative of the slavery party in politics is the Democrat Party. That's Frederick Douglass. It's not me saying it. I agree with him, but it's not me saying it other than quoting it. That was Frederick Douglass in 1853. 1853. And again, as I pointed out, nothing's changed. They've just changed tactics. That's it. They've just changed tactics. So in his book, writings, articles, editorials, and speeches, Frederick Douglass described the historical events of the Democrat Party that crippled and hindered the liberation of Black Americans. Let me read some of these. In 1820, a Democrat-controlled Congress passed the Missouri Compromise, which permitted slavery in the federal territories. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Laws was approved, which required Northerners to return escaped slaves into slavery or pay a financial fine. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was authorized, which extended slavery into Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Do you see how the Democrats wanted to expand the slavery, expand people being subjected to them, to their way of thinking, to what they wanted, what they desired? It's the same thing today, ladies and gentlemen. They're always trying to expand something that controls another person's life. You see, sometimes we misunderstand it and look at it like, oh, they're going to expand the welfare state. Oh, that's a good thing. No, it's not, because every person that's on welfare is now subject to the state, or in that sense, to the federal government. And they want to expand these social programs. You know, a lot of people are arguing and fighting and say, we need health care. We need to expand health care. Well, what does health care do? What does the federally funded health care do? It makes slaves of everybody who's in it and on it. They want to control every aspect of your life. See, when I say they've changed tactics by before they would take something away from somebody, and now they're still enslaving people by giving them something. Not enough to really overcome, but just enough to lock them in. And here's the thing. Now they've changed their tactics. They don't care the color of skin. They don't care the color of skin. Anybody and everybody that wants to go on the government rolls, hey, we'll take you. You are now, they won't say it like this, but you are now a slave to our system. And who is trying to expand those systems? The Democrat Party. But wait, ladies and gentlemen, there's more. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was delivered by a Democrat-dominated Supreme Court. It declared that blacks were not persons or citizens, but instead were property and therefore have no rights. Democrats said that. 1865 to 1875, Southern Democratic legislators implemented the following civil rights barriers to prevent blacks from voting. Let me see if I can shift and read this. Weaken their political representation, poll tax, literary tests, grandfather clauses, multiple ballots, black codes, gerrymandering, white-only primaries, physical intimidation and violence, property ownership requirements, and restrictive eligibility. That was all put in there by Democrats against blacks. 1866, Democrat formed the Ku Klux Klan in order to curtail the political influence of the Republican Party in the black community through intimidation and physical violence. We've all been taught about the lynchings of blacks by the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. That is true. So here's the extended version of the truth. The Ku Klux Klan did lynch a lot of blacks, trying to intimidate black Republicans of the day to vote Democrat, or this will happen to you. They also lynched many, I don't know the exact number, but many white Republicans for the same reason, primarily to intimidate blacks to vote Democrat. Here's a question that I have for you, people that are Democrats or vote Democrat. Why? Why would you vote for a party that used lynching, the murder of anybody, but especially black people in America? They use that to intimidate them to vote for that party. Vote for us or you'll die. Vote for us or you'll be at the end of a rope as well. Why would you vote for that? And that was primarily almost 100%, if not 100%, Democrat behind those. From 1882 to 1964, 4,743 individuals were lynched, 3,446 blacks, and 1,297 whites. I said a few minutes ago I wasn't sure how many. It's in here. In fact, during this time frame, the Democrats successfully blocked anti-lynching laws and failed to condemn lynching in its political platforms. So if anybody wondered, no, those were just maybe rogue Democrats. Those were just like some fringe Democrat. They may have been official Democrats, but they weren't really in alignment with the Democrat Party. Then why would the Democrat Party in the government, in the places that they could actually pass legislation to help stop this, make it illegal, why would they block it? If those were just fringe Democrats, the Ku Klux Klan and such, why would they block? Why wouldn't they block? Why wouldn't they stop them by passing legislation? Instead of passing the legislation, they blocked the legislation so that these Democrats in pointy white hats lynching blacks, few whites, but blacks primarily, well, it wouldn't be used against them. They couldn't go get them. Why? Because this was all part of the Democrat Party when they had Democrat control. Nobody was going to go get those other Democrats for killing blacks. No. Do you see how ridiculous this and how wicked the Democrat Party has been all the way back to the late 1800s, all the way through to 1964? Ladies and gentlemen, I was born in 1966. So this is really very, very, very close to my lifetime. And look at me, I am very much alive. This wasn't like 2,000 years ago. This wasn't even 200 years ago. This goes back about, let's see, I'm 59, 60, 61, about 61 years ago, right around in there. In our lifetime, in my lifetime, certainly. Anyways, I've been reading a lot, and there's still more. There is still more. But again, Frederick Douglass Republicans, look him up. This gentleman, again, K. Carl Smith. Look him up. Get one of these. Get one of these. there's more to this. It's very easy read. As you can see, it's very small, but there's still way more than what I was able to bring about in this, just this one video. And, my plan is to very soon, after we get settled, after this conference and everything, is to contact Mr. Smith and have him come out, hopefully sometime, and do further training and teaching along these lines, to which, if we're able to do that, I will let everybody know, get on here, do a quick video or something, and invite everybody. But these are the types of things that we need to learn. These are the types of things that we need, not just to learn and get the information here, but base up our life and our voting on. There's, again, and this works for both parties. We need to stop being so stuck in a political party because, well, maybe we come from a family of either Republicans or Democrats, or my mama. I've heard this a lot in my years of talking about this thing. Well, my mama has always been a Democrat, so I'm a Democrat. And that goes for both parties. I'm not just trying to throw that on Democrats, but if you're gonna, at least in this sense, are the Republicans perfect? Absolutely not. I am a Republican, but there's sometimes I'm not very happy with my party. So that's why I am changing my verbiage and what my description of myself. Am I conservative? Well, yes, I know I was joking around about it earlier, but a better description of what I am. Yes, conservative, of course, because those are my values, but I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. Why? Because I fully agree with not only what's in here, but I fully agree with those four tenets of his values. Okay, his values that brought him to the place of being a Republican, and even helping through his speech and his writing to form the Republican Party of freedom and progress, an anti-slavery party. I'm all for that. I don't like slavery. I really don't like to be told what to do personally myself, and I don't like to tell anybody else what to do in that regard. I like freedom, love freedom, and I like progress. So I want to be a part of the Frederick Douglass Republicans, and be a part of a party that's all about freedom and progress, and that it's freedom. It does everything it can to set free, if you will, or make free those who have been in slavery. Now you say, we haven't had slavery here for almost 200 years. We've had slavery of the mind. We've had slavery of emotions. We've had slavery mentally, financially, economically. We've had slavery. And who's been behind all of that slavery? The Democrat Party. For sure, ladies and gentlemen. So anyways, please look this man up. Once again, his name is Carl Smith. Look him up and, get some of his materials, maybe reach out to him, find an email address or a phone number, call him, email him, hit him up, ask him some questions. He's a brilliant man, very educated man, well-spoken man. He made it very, 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 very clear, not only what he believed, but why he believed it. And it was moving to me. So I wanted to come on here and kind of share his knowledge, but there's no better way to get somebody's knowledge, if you will, or understanding or reason, well, go straight to them. So I know I'm a middleman, but not a middleman to try to take his job from him, but to introduce you to him so that you can go straight to him. And that's not going to bother me at all. All right, at all. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm here. I really appreciated this young man coming out and teaching us the way he did. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and it confirmed a lot of things within me. Okay, God bless you. I hope to see you all soon. And hey, let's really build the Frederick Douglass Republican Party and demand that the party leaders also embrace the Frederick Douglass ideology. We'll all be better off. God bless.